Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this SimpleCoach Coach interview. Really do appreciate you taking the time. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, I've really been trying to look for schools that are sort of outside the normal purview of sort of what I cover on the East Coast. And so you having on board is definitely appreciated.
Well, I'm happy to be here and obviously excited to represent, the Southern soccer area in Division Three, which is a little underrepresented at times.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, all I say is you all got to do is South and West. Like I go South and West, and it's like, yep, underrepresented. I totally get it. Like I said, I think the boards and the folks who do all the talking there are sort of all in the East Coast in this upper quadrant. So, yeah. So hey, I think I got this right. You've been the head coach at Sewanee for. Oh, and before I ask you that question, is it Sewanee? You don't go by University of the South, right?
It is our official title. Sewanee is a town that we're located in.
Okay.
So it's kind of a dual name.
Yeah.
You can say Sewanee or University of the South,
Okay.
but it's not Sewanee, the University of the South.
Yeah. Okay. So Sewanee. Okay. All right. So I had to clear that up. So you've been head coach. I think I got that right for like 10 years.
Yeah, so into my 10th year, but 9 seasons, 8 seasons minus COVID.
Yeah. Minus COVID, right? So I'm just curious, just to get started here, what's your experience been like? What's your soccer journey like, and how did you get to Sewanee?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually a Northeast guy. I'm from Reading, Pennsylvania.
Oh wow! Oh my
Yeah,
gosh!
I went to E-Town College, had a great experience there. Coached at Temple University right in Philadelphia, and then after being there for a little while, kind of it appreciated my love for Division III athletics. So I decided to find the best academic and best soccer school I could find, and within like 3 or 4 days of figuring out what drives Division III sports, the Amherst job opened up. I applied and went up to Amherst. Was there for almost 3 years. Had an unbelievable experience. And when I was there, I knew I wanted to work in high academic Division III liberal arts. The job at Sewanee opened, and it was everything that I wanted out of a college experience in coaching, but geographically never been to Tennessee in my life. So I didn't apply, but my prior boss, Justin Trapone, he basically applied for me. He's like, "You got to do this." It checked every box that you said, you have to do this. And went down for my interview and my visit and fell in love with the place. Fast forward 9 years, almost 10 years, and been loving it ever since.
So that's interesting that you went from Division I Temple to Division III, and it sounds like that was intentional. Like you didn't want to stay in Division I because you didn't want to stay in Division I.
Yeah, I come from a family of athletes. My dad played football at University of Maryland. My sister played volleyball at NC State. My brother went to Louisville, played soccer.
Yeah.
And, I was the lone Division III athlete in my family. But, we always argue at Thanksgiving, who had a better experience. And I'm the only one that still pursues, their athletic endeavors.
Yeah.
I love soccer. I had an unbelievable experience. I played for a legendary coach, Skip Roderick, and he really, pushed the love of the game for me. And I spent time in Division I because I wanted the experience and see what it was like. And then not to discredit it or demean it by any means, but it just wasn't for me. It was more of a job. And I never felt that way as a player. And obviously, when it became your job as a coach, but still, I saw like what my coach at Skip, how he treated the game and how he fell in love with it. Well, he loved it, and I wanted more of that experience. So I basically looked at Division III, and was like, what are the best teams? Perennially in the top 25. Who are those schools? And 20 of the 25 schools are always top academic universities. The NESCACs, the UAA, the Centennials, and then the hodgepodge group of schools, throughout. So I was like, all right, well, let's find the best rated academic school and the best soccer fit, and hopefully one of those jobs opens up in the next, few months. And fortunately, the Amherst job did, and made that transition, and it was unbelievable. I tell everyone I got a master's degree in Division III soccer working at Amherst College.
Oh, I am sure. I am sure Justin Serpone is supposedly legendary when it comes to his how he runs his program and his view of the game and whatnot.
Absolutely, he is definitely one of my biggest mentors as a coach. And the culture side, I've never seen someone, you know, run a program from a recruiting standpoint, cultural standpoint, player management. It was unbelievable. So I felt like I got a really good experience with coaching soccer from my college experience with Skip Broderick, and then the off the field stuff with Justin. So a really
Yeah,
good combination of the two.
yeah. I have reached out to Coach Roderick at E Town, but hasn't gotten back to me. So
Well, I'll give him a call. He's
yeah,
not the best with technology, so
great.
you might not
That
figure
explains
out.
it. I might have
You
to
might
write him a letter.
figure out, but no, he'd be great. He would
Yeah,
have you in stitches.
yeah. Were you E Town had like those years where I think it was almost like nationals. I mean, was that your time period?
No, that's before me. In '89,
Yeah,
they won the
yeah,
national
yeah.
championship.
That's it.
We were good when I was at E-Town, but we
Uh,
never beat Messiah. I believe I'm
yeah,
0-7 versus them. Four regular season, three conference championships. So, yeah, not a tough spell, but we were good. My
yeah,
senior year, we lost them in the finals 1-0, and they went to win the
yeah.
national championship.
Nations, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They're just that's legendary that program.
it was.
Hey, let me. That it's a you probably have an interesting perspective since you went right. I mean, your trajectory: Division 1, Division 3, Division 3. Like, I mean, what are your thoughts on sort of the player talent? Has it evolved over the years? Do you think there's a significant difference between what you saw at Temple versus Amherst versus now at Sewanee? Do you think better, worse? Just curious as to your perspective on that.
Great question. I would say the level of college soccer, especially on the men's side, which is what I'm familiar with, has gotten so much better, across the board. A level of player in the United States is far beyond what it was, even when I played,
Yeah.
15 years ago. Um, if you compare my experience from Temple to Amherst, which is, 6 months, I would say my Amherst team was better than my Temple team.
Wow.
Um, yeah, when I was there in 2012 and 13 season at Amherst, and you can ask Justin, it might be some of the most uh, deepest rosters and best quality talent he had in his tenure. So I was fortunate to stumble in on a really good program at the time. Um, so yeah, and I look at my Amherst team then compared to my Sewanee team when I first started, and it was night and day. There's 400 and some odd Division III men's soccer programs, and I left Amherst. We were ranked number one in the country for the
Yeah.
majority of the year, and I took over a Sewanee program that might be in like the high 300s, low 400s level. Fortunately, we
At least you weren't like 430 or whatever the number is, 426.
we might have been. I don't know. I don't want to look. But we've been able to climb our way out and had a really good year this past season. So that was fulfilling for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Which leads me to can you just talk about the Southern Athletic Association? I'll be honest with you. I am not familiar at all with. I'm not familiar at all with the conference and sort of the most of the teams. And the only one I'm familiar with is Birmingham Southern, and that's because the news was really bad and then really good in terms of the survival of the institution. So maybe could you just sort of talk about who you play and sort of the level of the conference?
Yeah, great question. So Birmingham Southern obviously really excited that they're staying afloat and
Yeah,
not closing their doors. So good for the conference. Obviously, great program. They won our regular
yeah,
season. So they won our conference championship last year. So in our conference, you have Oglethorpe University, which is in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. Yeah,
Perennially top program. They play a really tough non-conference schedule. You'll see them play a lot of Mid-Atlantic teams. I know they went up and played W every year, and they played Messiah in the past. Center, who went to the Final Four in 2019, they're in Danville, Kentucky. You have Rhodes College, which is in Memphis, and then Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi, Berry College in Rome, Georgia. So we're pretty geographically, diverse all
Spurs.
over the
Yeah, yeah.
South. If you look at like travel wise in a conference, we might have some of the most, compared, because we drive everywhere. And with that said, in 2025, Southwestern and Trinity University are joining the conference. So
Oh,
um, from the
from the
SCAC,
SCAC. Wow, I didn't know
yeah.
that.
So it's going to help a lot from a SOS standpoint, adding Trinity
Mm-hmm.
and Southwestern, two really good programs,
Mm-hmm.
and then also adding even more travel to the roster. So we'll have flights now.
Mm-hmm.
So almost reconnecting the old SCAC conference because
Yeah.
Sewanee and a few others were original members.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Well, I didn't know that they were going to be joining. Hey, does that? I mean, you raise the SOS. Is it a challenge for you, just sort of where you're located to raise your strength of schedule?
Oh, big time. You
Yeah.
know, we so next year we played WNL, and next year
Mm-hmm.
we're going to play WNL in Hampton, Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 10-hour drive,
Yeah. Yeah.
for two games, and we definitely struggle keeping our SOS up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Before our regular season started, we were about a 565 SOS.
Mm-hmm.
By the time our season ended, we were at 515.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are things in conference that we need to better of. We do an all-in model where the
Yeah.
one seed plays the eight seed, the two
See.
plays
Yeah.
the seven, and for us, we won the regular season and we co-champions, and we having to play those lower seeds
Yeah. That
across your
hurts.
SOS.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we needed to make improvements in our conference, but
Mm-hmm.
also playing teams. If you look at our roster or our schedule, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
We played some of the best teams that are attainable in our region,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah. Yeah.
still isn't quite good
Still
enough.
wasn't enough. Still,
Yeah,
wow,
and
that's interesting.
so next year we're playing Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming down to Tennessee to play us, and we'll return the following year. We picked up Hampton Sydney as well. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we're building our SOS up to get more
That's
competitive.
yeah. That's what it sounds like you have to do, right? Like you're out. Your conference is your conference, right? And you can't do anything about. Well, you can, but that's a longer term project. But it sounds like during the your non conference games, that's when you got to really load up, right? And which it's like a double edged sword, right? Like
Yeah, it
you're
can be
like,
tough.
hey, oh my god, we're exhausted after 6 games.
Absolutely. And for us, you have to drive,
Yeah,
10,
yeah,
12 hours to play
yeah,
those games.
yeah,
You're expecting a lot from your team in a very difficult situation.
yeah, yeah.
And with that said, too, the SAA is a much stronger conference than we get
Mm-hmm.
credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, we were a little bit down in that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Some perennial teams didn't have quite the records they normally
Mm-hmm.
do. And I built our schedule expecting maybe a 550 to 565 SOS.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had, three teams that had very uncharacteristic seasons in our
Mm-hmm.
conference. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't really control those.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
think,
yeah,
and you can't really, uh, you know, if you don't have a crystal ball seeing the future of
yeah, yeah,
how it plays out.
yeah,
But I've learned the hard way that we need to, regardless, bulk up the schedule and play the best teams you can.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's why when I said earlier, sort of me focusing on teams in the sort of the South and further out west. It's like it's a common refrain: is how do you bolster your SOS without killing your team or killing your chances, right? And I think that's a real issue, right? Which I don't want to say. Just to me, the way I would like strength of schedule. I think there's got to be some accommodation for the difficulty of scheduling games to bolster your strength of schedule, right? For whatever the reason. I don't know how you do that. I don't have grand ideas, but right, like I think that should be accounted for, especially like you said, the difficulty that it is to I couldn't even imagine the difficulty of it is to drive 10 hours to play a game and then have to win it because otherwise you're going to be penalized for that. And you're like, what? I'm like, that just doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
I mean, we're at the point where we're paying teams to come play us, and
Yeah.
they still don't want to.
Hey, I'll come. Pay me.
Yeah,
I'll come out and I'll play. I'll take a.
come on down.
Yeah.
Um, and in the past, I believe in like they disbanded this in like 2014 or 15, but there used to be a away game super score. So if you
Hmm.
played an away game, you actually got a little bit more of a bump,
Hmm.
if whether or not you won or lost to your SOS.
Yeah.
So it is a multiplier that I think that needs to come back. If
Yeah.
and that's the only way to, I want to say, make the even out the playing field a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you are traveling to play those games
Yeah.
and you beat a really good team or even a bad team, but a away win is hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and especially again, just sort of in the Northeast, a lot of schools have the opportunity to, like, it's not hard to schedule really good games against really good competition, right? Because
Oh, right.
there's a difference between talking to somebody that's an hour away or an hour and a half, 2 hours away, even three, versus you're going to have to get in a bus for 10 hours. That means you're going to have to at least one night, probably two if you want to be fair, right? And
That's
it's
exactly right. I mean, it's a major budgetary restriction as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not even getting into the
Yeah.
academic part of that, but yeah,
Well, yeah,
that's
the academics, yeah, you can't
or
be
yeah,
missing
yeah.
class, but then the financial
Economic, yeah, the
concern.
economic piece. That's what I meant. So,
We fundraised $65,000 2 weeks
mm-hmm.
ago in our
Mm-hmm.
giving day,
Yep.
and I'd say over half of that will go towards funding travel
Travel.
the next year or two, helping
Yeah.
us, play better games. And it's like
Uh,
it's just a tough situation to be in,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
have to do it.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome though. 65 grand. That's great to see that you guys have alums that kick in that. That's we just had my alma mater just had its giving day, which I didn't give after all was said and done because I was jam packed, which don't tell my fellow comrades at Mount Union.
Won't say anything.
Yeah. Um, That's all right. John Carroll is trying to recruit me to be like an honorary alum, so I got options if
There
they
you go.
don't like it. Hey, where do you generally recruit from? Do you have like a region? I don't again not knowing Sewanee and sort of like are you more focused regionally? Do you have a much more expansive recruiting territory?
Yeah, great question. When I first got the job, I tried to take the Amherst model and implement it in Sewanee and recruit, worldwide essentially. And I
Hmm.
quickly realized that was a losing model.
Yeah.
We've really focused, especially in the last 5 years, on our region. If
Hmm.
Texas through Virginia and down.
Yeah.
We have major hotbeds: Charlotte, Raleigh, Atlanta,
Hmm.
Birmingham, you know, Texas, Houston, and Dallas. But we do recruit outside those regions, but typically those are kids that have reached out to us, come to our camps. We've seen, maybe
There's
at
an interest. Yeah.
yeah. So we'll have a kid. We have a kid from Eugene, Oregon, on the team.
Hmm.
Chicago next year, Colorado Springs.
Hmm.
But those are kids that have all have come our way.
Hmm.
But yeah, our focus is essentially those big cities,
Yeah.
those clubs in those cities. Sewanee has a really strong regional draw from those
Hmm.
areas. And we do, I think the university has 48 states represented,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
from a recruiting soccer standpoint and a financial standpoint, it's easier for us to see,
Yeah.
an Atlanta kid that's only 2 hours away
Yeah.
versus trying to find some kids in, Boston and New York, and
Yeah. Yeah.
also competing against very like-minded schools
Yeah.
in those regions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not a bad area to be in, though, right? Like, because you do have access to some pretty good soccer and talent that I generally see across the board. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's really good soccer, especially the Atlanta area, Charlotte, fantastic.
mhm.
We just gotta keep those NESCAC schools out of this region.
Yeah. Damn NESCAC. Um, Hey, just because your experience with Coach Serpone, like how big of a deal and were there things that you did from a team culture perspective at Sewanee when you came on board? Do you place a big emphasis on that?
Absolutely. I look at, you know, culture as being, one of the foremost important things in college athletics. It's such a unique beast. Your high school team, you meet after school, you play, you have games for a few months out of the year. Club soccer, right? You show up for practice, you go to a tournament. Pro soccer, it's a job. But in college, you go to class together, you room together, you eat in the same dining hall, you study in the same library, you train. You're literally with your teammates sometimes, 24 hours a day. If you don't have a good culture, it's impossible to be successful, at least in the longevity, in the long term. It's not sustainable. So we are very conscious about it. And I definitely have taken a lot of what I learned from Amherst and implemented it here at Sewanee. And ultimately, it comes down to just, you know, finding like-minded guys in the process and then, cultivating, that while they're there and encouraging it and doing things, not always even soccer related, but what I've learned is if the boys are together, usually it's a good thing. The more
Yeah.
time they spend together, the more success you can have,
Yeah.
whether it's volunteering, bowling, watching a movie, playing FIFA,
Mm.
watching film,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it may be, usually it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Um. All right. So just what? Let's start with just on the season. Now that you have some time removed and hopefully some of the if there were wounds that you experienced that bothered you, what would you say as it was is your overall assessment of how the season went for you, and just to you were really good 13-4 record, but yeah, just curious as to what your impression is when somebody asks you.
Yeah, I tell everyone if you told me, in August you're going to be 13-4, you're going to beat Emory, you're going to win the regular season, I'd be over the moon. But now looking back on the season and, even in those four losses, three of them I felt that we could have easily not happened.
Hmm.
And then, how the season ended, losing in the conference semifinal, it felt like it came up a little bit short. We
Hmm.
were blessed. We were very healthy for most of the season and then caught an injury bug kind of late.
Hmm.
And I think because of not having to experience many injuries throughout the regular season,
Hmm.
we weren't great at, adjusting and
Hmm.
in that if you look at our minutes played, we 13, 14 guys had the
Yeah.
majority of our minutes played in the season.
Yeah.
So we didn't do great finding ways to fix, a late season injury. Um, but we only gave up 8 goals on the year. We had a fantastic defensive line. Our center back was an All-American. Our goalkeeper was first team All Region. So really excited, and I think that it's definitely a great building block because we'll return 9 of 11 starters
Oh wow. Yeah.
besides our center back and goalkeeper,
Hmm.
and two major pieces in the puzzle. But if I do my job properly, we should be able to replace and hopefully continue forward. So very excited on the year. Wish it would have continued, but knowing that based off the numbers and we needed to at the minimum win that semifinal game, most likely
Hmm.
win the conference to get into the NCAA tournament. I knew that. Uh, we needed to bulk our schedule because I do think that from a quality standpoint, we were better than a lot of teams that initially make the NCAA tournament,
Hmm.
through automatic bids and so on and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
forth. But I knew that we didn't stand a shot, because of the
Yeah.
criteria.
Yeah. 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 What? So you lost in the semifinals to Birmingham Southern, and then you beat them in the regular season, and then you lost in the semis. Like, what was there something about that semifinal game that got the upper hand on you, or is that a bit of a rivalry, which is emotion high emotion type game?
Yeah, first and foremost, all credit towards them. I think that the Birmingham Southern staff outcoached us. I think they
Hmm.
were better prepared for the game, and from the regular season, we liked what we did and didn't really make many changes. But we did suffer an injury to our right back,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved our center mid to right back. He got
Mm-hmm.
hurt in the game. We played our 10 at right back. We were
Mm-hmm.
band-aiding a right back position, and
Mm-hmm.
they exploited it. They probably
Mm-hmm.
have one of the best players, not only in our conference but in Division Three this year. And his name's Coleman Jennings, fantastic player. He's doing his grad year at Rollins next year,
Mm-hmm.
and he just, they scored a goal on a set piece early in the first half, and then he created a number of chances. So,
Mm-hmm.
all credit to them. But we played at 11 o'clock in the morning in
Oh my gosh.
Memphis. It was about 90 degrees, and we were not prepared for that. Not that we were unfit. I definitely value fitness. It just when you're used to playing at 7 o'clock, when it's in the
Yeah.
30s and 40s at night, or 40s or 50s, it's much different than 90 degrees in a sunny day.
Yeah.
And we didn't do well in that scenario. But also, just we failed to come out energized and prepared and ready
Mm-hmm.
for a game.
Yeah.
We were a little flat, and they exploited us big time.
Yeah.
Second half, and well, I'd say the second half of the first half and the second half we played much better, but the damage was done. We had
Done.
two
Yeah.
goals in 20 minutes.
Oh, really? It was that quick? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, or 20.
Wow.
Is it 25 minutes? It was
Yeah.
pretty early.
Yeah.
I,
Wow.
s- I still have struggled to watch the film from that game. I've watched pieces of it. My assistant has showed me the goals and bad plays, but I've not watched the whole game in its
Yeah. that's
entirety.
that's okay. You can let dust accumulate on it. um,
Open wound still.
yeah. Hey, what surprised you about your team this year? Is there anything that comes to mind?
We were really the COVID bug was bad for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that was really hard for us, especially because our conference still played a season, but our president didn't let Sewanee play. So
Oh
while
wow.
our conference was
Yeah.
still competing, we weren't able to. And I think we're one of the very few schools that were able to play but not play. A lot of
Yeah.
the Northeast, they canceled everything.
Yeah.
It was an even playing field for everyone.
Yeah.
And during that time, we had players step away from the program, kind of get burnt out, kind of saw life outside of soccer.
Yeah.
So our senior class this year was only 4 players, but we had 9 before
Yeah.
COVID started, and it was the best class I've ever recruited.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had those guys with us still today or in the fall, we would have been a much better team, which is crazy to
Right.
say.
Right. Right.
Um, but we last year was kind of the rebound year, and
Mm-hmm.
it was still very tough. We went 500, which was about probably where we were at, even though we wanted to be better. And then this past season we refocused, regrouped, got over that
Mm-hmm.
that COVID hump, and the boys were really wanting to make a name for ourselves, knowing that we were kind of on the cusp before. In
Mm-hmm.
2019 we were 11-5-1. 2020 hits, cancels 20,
Yeah.
not what we wanted. And then this year was, I think, was our coming out party,
Mm-hmm.
and something that was a long time coming.
Yeah. But um, was there, knowing that you're sort of on that upward trajectory after the whole COVID debacle, which what were there any particular challenges that you dealt with throughout the year? It doesn't seem like it based on your record, right? Like, I mean, I'm looking at your schedule, and you guys were on a roll. But was there anything that you dealt with throughout the season that was particularly challenging to you, or was it all unicorns and rainbows?
I would say it's never that easy. I do think that our guys struggled with the time that
Mm-hmm.
a real season takes.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back into the swing of, all right, it's 6 days a week.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times we travel so much. Sometimes you're put in 50, 60 hours, including the
Yeah.
bus rides.
Yeah.
It's a major commitment that not everyone on our team was used to.
Yeah.
And even our upperclassmen, they aren't necessarily used to it to teach and mentor the younger guys.
Yeah.
We had to really start over, from that perspective, that mentor mentee,
Mm-hmm.
helping players out, because even in our juniors and seniors, our senior class only had one real season of soccer before COVID
Yeah.
hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was a relearning process for
Mm-hmm.
sure. in a good way and a bad way. We were able to right some wrongs and fix some bad habits,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
also we had to reinforce our core values, which we
yeah,
think that continue on.
yeah, yeah. I That's a good point. I never even thought about that. Like this was the first year where it was sort of like everything back to fully normal. Like I think no one expected their games to get canceled. Like last year, I think there was always this anticipation. Oh my gosh, your next game could be canceled, right? Like it just. Whereas I think this year was back to the way, and it does take an adjustment, right? And yeah, you almost have to start over because I think if you don't, like you said, reinforce the core values, it's so easily lost. I don't think people realize that maybe they do, but how quickly you can lose these things that you've spent your years on years. You think you got it, but then how quickly that goes if you're not sort of constantly on top of it. I think it's the nature of things, right?
Absolutely. I always use the analogy of a relationship. If you
Mm-hmm.
stop calling your boyfriend or girlfriend,
Yeah,
it's gonna die. It's not
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
last.
yeah,
You got to constantly be pursuing,
yeah,
and working on it, or else it
yeah,
falters.
yeah.
So, but yeah, you think about it as like, oh, the coach has been there for X amount of years.
Mm-hmm.
It just runs itself.
Yeah,
It
no,
doesn't work
it
that way.
doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. Definitely does not work that way. Hey, and you didn't have. I'm just going to ask you. You didn't have any OTs, so I don't know if this is a question for you. Like, do you, do you have any thoughts on the overtime changes? Is this something that you were in favor of not having them, or again knowing that I don't think your schedule I saw any ties. So
Yeah, we were one of the very few teams in the
yeah,
nation not to go into over or not to have a
yeah,
tie this year.
yeah,
Um, One, I think that I'm a pretty aggressive person when it comes to coaching. So, we had like the opportunity to tie once this year, and I was like, no, like we're going for the win, and it cost us. We lost the
yeah.
game. um, we
You're
uh,
like me though. Let me just say, like I'd be like, screw, we ain't tying. Like throw. I don't want to defend. I'm always like, get on the attack. Go. What do I got to do? Anyhow, sorry.
yeah, it was looking back, mistake, but
Yeah.
it was but that's just who I am. And I was like, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
I'm not changing.
Yeah.
But I voted in favor of the overtime rule.
Mm-hmm.
If For a number of reasons. Number one, if you look at some of these teams, and Williams, for example, if they would have gone into overtime and if they would have played out all 20 minutes of overtime, and I think it was a 10 or 11
Yeah.
games,
11.
you're looking at playing an extra 2 games and
Yeah.
some in a season.
Yep.
A lot of extra soccer, which I don't know if is necessarily healthy for our athletes. Um, and then secondly, this is more of a selfish thing, from a Sewanee perspective, but we share a field with our women's program.
Mm-hmm.
Our women's program in 2022 went to like 6 overtime games. From a coaching perspective, we have to warm up, stop, wait, and then be on pins and needles waiting for when that game ends. It
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
be 2 minutes into overtime, or it could
Yeah.
be 20 minutes later or
Yeah.
30 minutes later after the halftime. So it's really tough for coaches, that share a facility. And again, that's a selfish perspective of the overtime rule,
Mm-hmm.
but it does add an added level of what do you do.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting. You see teams with so many ties. I think the NESCAC this year,
Oh yeah.
in general, and you can
Yeah.
just it changes the game.
Yeah.
So, am I in favor of it still? That is, it's tough. I do think that maybe there needs to be a rule on maybe non-conference games versus conference games overtime, or a limit to one period of overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if we had to vote again, I'd still probably vote for no overtime
No
rules for next
overtime.
year. If we
Yeah.
were to go on again. So I know it's interesting because there were so many teams that had it, and it definitely affected
Yeah.
SOSs and conference
Yeah.
rankings.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does, again, and from the perspective of it does equal the playing field for teams that do travel really far games.
Yeah.
We played WNL this past season. We lost 1-0, and it was a great match. They were better than us and deserved to win, but we could have easily pulled out a draw. But I
Sure.
don't know if we had to play two overtimes if that
If
was
that would have lasted.
possible for us.
Yeah, yeah,
At least it made a game that looked very difficult on paper, and it was in actuality.
yeah.
But it's like, we're going to play them again next year, and we're
Mm-hmm.
going back to the WNL. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, if maybe we look at it from a different lens and maybe change a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to get a point on the road
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah, yeah. Can I ask you just from the soccer perspective? I know WNL. I mean, they're elite, right? Like they're top of that top. Like there's a handful of teams that I would put that, and they're definitely one of them. Like how just based on that game that you played, where would you say you were at in comparison to Washington and Lee?
Great question. I always say, like, competing with a team is
Mm-hmm.
different than beating a team.
Yeah,
In soccer, right, a one-goal game can look very different depending on how the game is played out.
yeah,
It could be a 10-9 shots on goal versus
yeah.
a 20-2.
Two, yeah,
So the game can be very, very different, and then sometimes even those stats aren't indicative to how the game was played. Um, but I would say WNL was, they were a better team than us.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
They had more depth than we did, but I wouldn't say that they were better than in every position than we were. We
Mm-hmm.
were we were closer than we were far,
Mm-hmm.
and again, they deserved to win the game. But I'm excited to play them next year.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a great measuring stick for us. Um, and I think that we were probably a little bit underrepresented from a ranking standpoint, which I
mm-hmm.
really don't care for to begin
Yeah,
with.
yeah, yeah,
But we were pretty good.
yeah, yeah,
We know, I think, beating Emery this year was a good
yeah,
measuring stick as well. Something we
yeah.
haven't done in almost 20 years.
Years, yeah,
So and with it said, I think we need more better games.
yeah, yeah,
We need to play a Gettysburg and someone
yeah,
else to
yeah.
prove that all right, we're beating teams in our region, but you know with the exception
Can
of
we step
Covenant.
outside? Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, Covenant, give them a lot of credit. They go out and play CNU and Virginia
yeah,
Wesleyan. We beat them this year 2-0
yeah,
in a good match. But other than that, a lot of our teams don't really leave this area, so it's hard to compare and contrast.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I always say, right, like especially when it comes to schedule and all that stuff, like iron sharpens iron. You are never going to be a program if you shy away from teams like Washington and Lee, and you're never going to get there, right? I just think that's the reality of it. You have to be willing to go and play those teams that might be better, might not be, but that's how you sort of advance your cause just a little bit, even in the loss, right? Like it's different if you go there and they pummel you,
Right.
like 7-0. They got 40 shots on goal, and they're down to their like 35th man on the roster and subs, right? Like that's a different. I don't mean that. I just mean going toe to toe, battling it out just to see where you're at, and then you just made a little bit more progress. And who knows, next year, now right? Like, and now your guys know. I think that's huge, huge, huge. And
Yeah,
so,
I completely agree. I think, we lost that match, but we won,
yeah,
a lot more confidence for our players because
yeah,
we've been talking about, we are closer than we are far, and
far,
we've been,
yeah,
you know, telling the guys, from my experience, I've watched, the best of best Division three
yeah,
soccer.
yeah,
I know where we stack, but in the past, we haven't always played the toughest strength of schedule
yeah,
schedule. They didn't know.
yeah.
But so playing that game and duking it out, and even in the lost, the boys gained a lot of
Uh,
confidence. And
it's
they
an eye
carried on.
opener, right? Like you said, you can tell them into, and you know this, right? You can tell them until you're blue a player, until you're blue in the face. Don't don't show them too much respect. They're good, right? They have to go out there and they have to learn it for themselves. Like, man, they weren't as good as I built up in my head. Like all this psychological stuff, and they have to play. Okay, so now they know, and who knows? Next year they just might be like, we can do this, right? And that's sort of the mentality you need to go into a game like that. That's why anytime I think I see like Messiah play Washington and Lee, or these Tufts going some up against Amherst, they're not going in there intimidated. They're going in like we can win this, and I think that's the starting point, right? And that's the good. Those are the really good teams that just know we're going to win this game, right? And I think
And I think you're absolutely right. And a lot of those games are, by those teams are won before they were played
exactly
because of that
yeah
mentality.
yeah
Especially you look at Messiah in those, late 2000s,
yeah
2007 through 11 or whatever it
yeah
is, and
yeah.
they won 95% of the games before they
Just
touched the ball.
before the whistle blew, they were already 2, 3, 4 goals up, right? Like it's seriously like you're just, and you can almost see it sometimes. And even this season, you watch teams and they're all like, "Oh my gosh, Messiah!" Right? And yeah, I'm a big fan, so but it doesn't do them any favors to go in with that mentality. It's almost like you're better off being like, we got nothing to lose. Let's just throw caution to the wind, right? Like,
Yeah,
right. It's a better mentality than to be like totally intimidated by what's coming at you. But
no doubt. And
uh,
I'll add as well that, because of the success we had, and especially, playing against some of these better teams, the buy-in we had this off season has been much greater.
mm,
Players have a true belief that we have the potential of being, an NCAA tournament
yeah,
team.
yeah,
And that's something that we've talked about for years. And now there's a belief factor that has added a level of commitment and
yeah,
what the guys are doing because that's what their goals are. And they realize that it's closer than far and it
yeah,
is attainable.
yeah, yeah. All right, let me ask you, what are your plans for this spring? I'm assuming you're training already. I think I saw that you're training already, or you're done.
So yeah, we're done actually.
Uh, yeah,
We're,
nice.
we're able to start a little bit sooner than most, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's a lot warmer down here.
Yeah.
So we actually played University of Alabama Huntsville Division II program
Mm.
last Friday,
Oh
so a
wow.
week ago.
Mm.
Great game, lost 1-0. Played our starters for about 65 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Probably should have scored a hat trick, or one player should have had a hat trick in the first about 10 minutes, but didn't work on finishing this spring.
Yeah.
Worked on different phases of the game, but
Yeah.
not the attacking third.
Yeah.
So that's what I kept telling him, like, don't worry, we didn't work on that. Uh,
Yeah.
and then conceded a goal with about 8 minutes left in the match
Mm-hmm.
with some
Yeah.
reserves. But good game, and I think
Yeah.
it was a really good measuring stick. They're a competitive program, and I know they brought in a lot of transfers this past winter. So it was a fun game. Miserable weather though, uh, but actually a really good turnout and
Yeah.
enjoyable atmosphere. So
Yeah.
we're done,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of weird because it is. Like, I look at all my other friends they're just sometimes like midway through their spring season right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have
Yeah.
they're working out. They're still doing some stuff, but
Mm.
I'm free from my 5 week Division III one game,
Yeah.
which we can talk about for hours. But yeah, it's over for us for now.
Yeah. I'm going to assume you like the rule change for next year. You're getting basically an extra week. I don't know how, I forget the formula.
Yeah, the 24 days.
Yeah.
I am a huge proponent. I think it's great. Now rather than the weeks going through a day model. So if weather changes, you don't lose that practice.
Yeah.
But I still think that we need to allow at least one more game.
Yeah.
I think there should be three or play days, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one game is not good enough. I mean, I'd rather than take away two of the practices. Don't add any more actual days, but say it's
Mm-hmm.
you get 22 days of practice and three play games or
Yeah.
play days. But I do think it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, like, training, train training for training's sake gets old very, very fast. And even at the professional levels, you hear guys say, like, we've been going for the pre-World Cup, right? Like, that's hard because there's no sort of end to it, and I think that's almost what the spring is going to become. Like, man, that's just a long, tiresome without, hey, the enjoyment of the game. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, we've been thinking about ways to, you know, keep it fun and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
like splitting the team up
yeah,
half and half and doing like a or home and away.
Yeah.
So we will play 3 games, but two of them versus or inter
Yeah.
squads.
Yeah.
But make it like a game. Film it,
Yeah.
record it, live stream it.
Yeah.
Make it mean
Special.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Because I think that's what you got to do, right? Like these guys bust their tails, and just to be like, "Hey, pat on the back, great stuff today." I just don't think it's enough. I grew up when I was playing in Spain. It was always, look, the game is the reward for the hard work of practice, right? And so you worked hard in practice because you knew the game time would come around, and that was the reward. And then it was so anyhow.
that's a great point.
Okay, let me ask you about your recruiting. Your recruiting class. What does it look like? I mean, is it done? Do you still have guys that you're looking at?
Yeah, good question. So, similar to like the NESCACs and the Centennials,
Mm-hmm.
our recruiting timeline is a little bit sped up compared to a lot of Division threes. We've been finished now since I'd say November, maybe a little bit
Mm-hmm. Oh
before.
wow, wow,
Yeah,
that's early. Okay.
yeah, we have 11 incoming freshmen and 2 transfer students,
Wow.
and yeah, it's a big class, way bigger than I expected. Um, and we kind of went through the normal offer about 15 guys, and normally that we retain, or you get 8 of those
Yeah.
guys that you offer. I think with the success of the season, there was more
Yeah. Yeah.
interest
Yeah.
and more kids decided to come,
Mm-hmm.
and I was never going to retract an offer to a player. I wouldn't be able to sleep with myself.
Boy, you have a conscience. Like God, thank
Yeah, I
God.
just can't do it. So we're definitely, it's the largest class of 13 new faces,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never brought in a transfer student up until this year.
Yeah.
So a new area for us as well in
Yeah.
that scenario. But
Yeah.
excited. If you look at our recruiting class, the majority of our boys are from the Southeast, like I mentioned before, but one from Colorado Springs, one from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 outliers, but everyone else kind of fits the mold.
Yeah.
And then from where they come from, we recruit really, ECNL guys, MLS Next guys is majority.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't care if you play at that level. It's just much easier for us to see
So, yeah.
the
Yeah.
exposure aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can play in your church league softball league. If you're a good player, you're a good
Yeah.
player. We'll take
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask you, like, how did the transfers come about? Just curious about it because I think everybody is dealing with it in different ways. But how did those transfers come your way? And are they coming from another D3, or are they coming from a Division One or two?
Good question. So both the guys we have come in are both Division 3
Mm-hmm.
transfers, and both kind of reached out to us. Like I said before, I really wasn't in looking at the portal, and
Mm-hmm.
was not active in that by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But both student athletes reached out to us and showed interest. One actually just came on his own. I told him that there was no guarantee. He really wanted to be at Sewanee,
Mm-hmm.
and we gave him all spring to try out, and he earned his spot.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is will be coming in the fall, and
Mm-hmm.
so a little bit different scenario, but I still don't know if I love the portal and what it's
Yeah.
done for
Yeah.
college athletics.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not going to be my main recruiting by any means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but the University of Sewanee has been much more open. In the
Mm-hmm.
past, we only admitted 7% of our transfer
Wow.
students, and
Yeah.
now they're up to like 40%.
Yeah.
So they're much more friendly towards transfers now, which
Mm-hmm.
has made it possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I Yeah, I was actually just listening to somebody. It was on Twitter, anti-social media. That the guy was talking about the transfer portal and said, like, this is more for the Division One folks. Is like, now you have guys who are mid-level players who have an agent and go farm them out into like other schools for playing time, and he's like incredulous, like, are you for real? And I I think it'll tone down a little bit. It's just it's just an interesting scenario because again, especially at the Division III level, I'm all about, and with my simple player 1, 2, and 3, I always tell them you're the soccer's the gravy, right? Like if that opens a door for you for a school that you want to go to, that you can get into academically, that it has the things you want, I think that's the more important thing. And when I see so much transferring, I wonder if that was the priority, right, for
Yeah.
others.
Oh, absolutely. It's skewed. The soccer
Yeah.
is way bigger than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I will say the portal's been good in some aspects as well.
Mm-hmm.
We, like I mentioned before, we have two senior starters, our goalkeeper and our center back, and our center back's taking his fifth year at College Charleston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Without the portal and without, those opportunities, I
He would
don't
have
think
been done.
like,
Yeah.
he would have been done. Yeah, but
Yeah.
now he's going to go play Division I soccer for a
Yeah.
year and get that experience, which I think he'll excel.
Mm-hmm.
And our goalkeeper is still, kind of figuring it out, but
Mm-hmm.
he's looking at some unbelievable, high academic schools.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name them now,
No,
but
sure, sure.
yeah, I mean, he most likely end up Division III, but at one
Mm-hmm.
of these, elite
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, without the portal, I don't know if that happens.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there are some good stories from it, but you hear a lot of horror stories.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to recruit your players, incoming freshmen, and you have to recruit your best players to come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, at a place like Sewanee, a lot of our guys aren't, shopping around. They're not looking to leave by any means.
No, yeah, yeah.
But I have friends, and they're, that's a constant worry now, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't like a lot. That's not, the ugly side of the game in college athletics currently.
Yeah, yeah. I think too the other issue that I've discovered from talking to different coaches is that the big concern is like the transfers. Are they bringing in baggage that you're just not aware of? That for their 1 year of eligibility or their 2 years of eligibility left, they can destroy whatever you've had built in the locker room, right? And I think that's I think that's with any, don't get me wrong, I think that's freshmen, incoming, but I think it's probably more salient because why are you leaving? What are like, is it because you didn't get along with a coach? Like, there's so many things that can run through your mind. And I think
I mean, you're absolutely right. When both recruits for us were transferring, I was like, why are you transferring?
Mm-hmm.
What is the main reason?
Mm-hmm.
And being very honest and deliberate, and intentional with your conversation, I think can lead to
Yeah.
a lot of things. And I do feel that you have to be you can't just base off the soccer aspect. Oh, this
Yeah,
player
yeah.
coming from this program. Oh,
Yeah.
we want him or her,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But in the same breath, you know, figure out exactly what their priorities are. Is it they want to go to a school that might help them get into med school, and they
Yeah,
realize that they may have made a bad choice early in the process.
yeah.
Those things are like, all right, that makes sense. All right,
Yeah.
I can work with that.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
but the
Agreed.
coach is like, oh, that coach is just an idiot. He didn't play me.
Yeah.
I deserve to be whatever.
Yeah.
All right, now let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because next thing you know, you're that coach. Like he's a terrible coach.
Yes,
Like,
that's exactly right.
yeah. You don't need that. You don't need that nonsense. Hey, I have one last question for you, and then I'll let you get on with your day. This has been fantastic. I really do appreciate it. This is a great conversation to start my Friday. My kids used to do that as in their like elementary school, like every chant, Friday. Anyhow, that was weird. I might cut that piece
No,
out.
I,
It makes
I,
me.
I, I appreciate that. That's good.
If you're me, where, who else who do you think would be a good conversation to have? I'd love to reach out to different coaches and sort of your perspective as to where you're at. Like who do you think would be good? Not to put you on the spot, you can answer
Yeah,
this
yeah.
later.
Wow, that's a really good question. I would say, if you can get Skip on the line,
Yeah.
he's got a wealth of knowledge. He's been around for I think 38 years. And one of the most winning coaches in Division III history.
Yeah.
I don't know if you talked to Paul McGinley, but he is.
I reached out to him. He hasn't said anything to me.
He's amazing. I don't know if Mike Singleton at WNL.
Yep, I've spoken to him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mike's great.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I mean, man,
All right,
know
that's
so many
good.
coaches.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge. I mean, so many interesting perspectives too. I
Yeah.
think that's the best part about coaching is that you go and talk to people, and it's like what they value versus what you
Yep.
value, what you
Yeah.
like in a player, they might not like
Yeah.
in a player, and
Yeah.
it's like anything else. And
Yeah.
there's chocolate and vanilla ice cream,
Oh,
and
there's so many. The variety of guys that I've spoken to is just remarkable. You think you guys are this, from the outside when you first start, it's like these cookie cutter. This is what they do. It's kind of like you're mass producing widgets, and then you realize the difference between person to person based on personality and school and all this. It's pretty amazing. That's probably been the most enlightening thing for me.
oh, I completely agree. You think every coach is the same person, and it's like
Yeah.
not every coach is this
No.
outgoing person. There's some type
Yeah.
A personalities, type
Yeah.
and everything in between. So
All right, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time today. Wish you and your men all the best. Enjoy the summer. Hopefully, we can connect again before the fall and maybe do like a preseason thing if you're up for it. But
absolutely, yeah. Just let me know. I'd love to talk to you again.
yeah, this has been great. And hopefully, this will get up today. A little bit later, I'll do some editing and we'll get it up there. So,
Sounds
right.
great. Well, I appreciate you reaching out, and this was fantastic.
Yeah. All right, Coach. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
You too. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.